this all ties into the fact that many retailers, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, are saying that taxpayers can't afford more hikes to taxes to help the federal government's coffers, and that this type of escalator tax, Marcia, they believe should be scrapped altogether to help give consumers a bit more of a break.
You know what could solve all of our problems in Canada? More taxes. Because let's be honest, you don't pay enough already. So Liberals thought that they would pull a world's first, a magic trick, if you will. They will show you how to draw blood from a rock. What did you expect from the former vice chairman of a hedge fund? Because he sure knows how to maximize shareholder value, whatever the cost. My name is Ellie Daniel, and this is the Right Call Report. Like, share, subscribe. All interactions on this channel helps get the truth out, and perhaps someday break that CBC-induced coma that so many Canadians are under. And if you're tired of that same old government and media BS and finally want some common sense commentary and the truth, well, smash that subscribe button because you're in the right place. So, breaking news right now, there's chatter going on that Parliament might be prorogued again. I'm seeing flashbacks of last year all over again, avoiding scandals, ramming legislation, avoiding accountability, the hallmark of a well-functioning democracy, of course. And speaking of chatter right now, there is mounting pressure on the government to scrap gas taxes because Canadians are feeling it, the cost is increasing everywhere, but the government doesn't seem too keen on giving Canadians reprieve. Meanwhile, governments around the world are listening to their people and doing what's right by them. But in Canada, we got to tax you more. And speaking of reprieve for the taxpayer, you know what would help people so much? The government operating grocery store. Yes, it's lunacy. I didn't make this up. It's the new hot word on the street. How can the government start running grocery stores? So we're going to dive into this and a whole lot more. So stick around because you got to stay informed and you don't want to miss this. Absolute power grab. That's what we might be witnessing right now in Canada. Because it was reported today that the Carney Liberals seem to be scheming to prorogue Parliament already the second that they sweep the April 13th by-elections and secure themselves a majority government. From a shaky minority government to a razor-thin majority government, then boom! Parliament prorogued. They shut down the entire House of Commons, kill every bill, stop all debate, avoid total accountability, and the bonus is they get to revamp committee however they want. Do allow themselves total control, it appears. New speech from the throne, zero opposition, no scrutiny, legislation rammed through. Like a dictatorship, this doesn't appear to be restructuring so much as it appears to be an autocrat, trying by all means to rewrite the rules how he sees fit. So I got this from a Globe and Mail article that says that the Liberal government is considering proroguing Parliament to gain control of House of Commons committee and more easily push through legislation if the party wins all of the 3 by-elections taking place on April 13th. This according to 2 Liberal Party insiders. Prime Minister Carney's government has been navigating a difficult minority parliament that has limited its ability to control committee agenda and passage of legislation. Yes, that's the whole point of a minority government. The Canadian electorate, albeit a little crazy enough to give the Liberal another government after a decade of absolute failure, did not see fit, however, to give them a majority. They saw fit to give them a minority, which means compromise with other party and also extra scrutiny. It means you don't have a dictatorship. It means that you have to work with others. And yes, it means at times contentious committee debates. Now, that hasn't stopped the Liberal from doing everything in their power to try to gain that majority in the most undemocratic way ever through shady little backroom deals, and who knows what kind of bribery has been occurring behind the scenes. Now, membership in committees is decided by the number of seats each party has in the Commons after a general election. In a minority parliament, the Liberals can be outvoted on committees by a combination of Conservative and Bloc Québécois, and legislation can be delayed for months, as it happened with the government's budget implementation bill. Oh, the tragedy, a government that cannot run whatever policy they want right through our teeth. But even with a majority, in order to restructure Commons committees, the government would still likely need to turn to prorogation, a procedure that ends the current session of Parliament and releases MPs from their parliamentary duties, including committee appointments. It's shady deals after shady deals. If the Liberals win the 3 by-elections, the source said, one option being looked at carefully is for the government to have a short prorogation, come back with a new throne speech, and revamp the committee system. Another option is to prorogue in September, the source said. Obviously, the Globe and Mail is not naming the 2 sources because they were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly. Of course. I mean, does this inspire confidence? Does it make you feel like the government actually wants to work with Canadians for Canadians? Or does it just feel like it's a continuous scheme on how to get more power, more control? And I mean, you just have to look at their legislative agenda so far with Bill C8, C9, C12, C22. It's all about government control. It's all about power. It's all about creating what appears to be a new king. But fear not, because Prime Minister Carney was questioned on this just today. This just came out, and he had this to say.
Are you considering cutting the federal gas tax to help Canadians at the pump? And at the same time, if you get a majority government in 10 days, are you considering proroguing Parliament, which may get in the way of any potential legislation?
Okay, I can answer the second one first. Absolutely not. It has never even entered my thinking, the possibility of that. So I couldn't have been more surprised to see a suggestion that was under consideration. Alors, en français, c'est aucune chance.
No chance.
On va faire une prorogation
we
du
will
Parlement.
not prorogue.
It did not even cross his mind. I have my very deep doubt that it never crossed his mind. However, this only tells me one of two things. Either his caucus or his party is kind of ripping apart between the people who want more control and the people who apparently don't. I don't know. Get your horses in order. But nonetheless, he is unequivocal, or so he says. But will he backtrack? Is it him just gaslighting us? This is coming from the party that for an entire year told us that the carbon tax was good and it actually made Canadians richer, up until the point where it didn't, and it actually made us poor, so it was removed, and then we were told that we're better for it because now we're richer. That's just gaslighting. So this is why I showed you this video for all to see. Save the video, share the video, push that video out. Let's make sure all Canadians hear about this, because we have to keep Carney accountable in the event that he backtracks and finds a new excuse to tell us that it's for our benefit that Parliament needs to be prorogued. Or maybe he'll just scapegoat the entire thing and blame it on the Governor General and say, it wasn't my idea. I did not want to prorogue Parliament. The Governor General did it on its own. And you know what? He would technically be right. It is not the Prime Minister that prorogues Parliament. It is the Governor General that prorogues Parliament. But let's be honest, the Governor General has turned into nothing more than a rubber stamping figurehead that does everything the Prime Minister tells it to do. You know, it kind of goes against the entire premise of the Westminster governmentary system. The crown, the royalty, was supposed to be the last check and balance on government overreach, on power grabs, on corruption. But we're at a point right now where that is not done anymore. The Governor General, to protect its job, because it's technically appointed there, yes, by the King, but on recommendation of the Prime Minister, and can be dismissed at any time by the King on recommendation of the Prime Minister, just pretty much rubber stamps whatever the Prime Minister says. And I mean, it didn't stop the Crown from allowing the Parliament to be prorogued last year in the midst of a existential trade war, we were being told. We were being attacked by the United States of America. You'd think that having a parliament in session there to deal with that crisis would have been the right thing to do. But no, because the Liberals were in shambles. Trudeau was tanking, and scandals after scandals were being revealed. So Parliament was prorogued. The Governor General obliged, although in my very humble opinion, this would have been a perfect case of not in the interest of Canadians. And as such, the prorogation should have been refused, but nonetheless. So, will we see this again? Will we not? Who knows? But an uninformed population that has grown apathetic to government corruption and to scandals will keep getting screwed over and over again. And this is why we cannot allow it, and we must stay informed. Speaking of staying informed, pop quiz here. In 2008, when oil was trading at $100 a barrel, gas was selling roughly at $1.10 to, say, $1.35 a liter, depending on where you were in the country. Today, well, oil is back up to $100 a barrel, but gas prices are between $1.70 and $2 a liter. Why is this? Why are we being screwed over? Yes, our Canadian dollar has tanked and is worth considerably less than the US dollar, so that accounts for a portion of it. Oh, and yes, taxes have also increased. So in short, this is why we're being screwed. But don't worry, the government is coming to your rescue by doing this.
Spirits is set to rise another 2% tomorrow when the federal government's automatic excise tax on alcohol goes into effect. Let's bring in CTV's Andy Bergeron-Oliver now to break it all down for us. Andy, good morning to you. The annual increase of the federal tax on alcohol goes into effect on Wednesday. Tell us about this.
The automatic tax increase. I don't think there's anything more scammy than a tax that is baked in to be increased year over year, predetermined. You're effectively looking at your population and saying, you know what? Every year, we will make things worse for you.
Well, this is a debate that happens every April 1st. Is this increase going to happen, and should it happen?
It's also funny they chose April 1st. I'm just saying, that's a great April Fool's, except you end up being a fool for the entire rest of the year, and then it only gets worse the next year.
So what's happening tomorrow is that beer, wine, and spirits, the cost is going to go up by 2%. Now, that cost was expected to go up much higher, but the government has introduced, according to sources, they are going to be pausing this hike so that it stays at 2% over the next 2 years. This tax called the escalator tax was introduced in 2017, and what it was is it was supposed to help increase the federal coffers by more than $1 billion by increasing the cost of beer, wine, and spirits to meet inflation every year without having to get parliamentary approval. Now, again, this has been in place since 2017, and according to Beer Canada, the cost of beer has gone up by at least 15%. So what the government is doing right now is freezing this. So instead of increasing to match inflation, it's going up at 2%. But still, there are some calls saying that even that 2% is far too high, that the tax on beer right now is too high, and that it's hurting a lot of small retailers, medium-sized retailers, because they have already so many things that are impacting their margins. Their margins are too small, they're struggling under inflation, and this is just going to add to that. So, there are a lot of people who are saying that this 2% shouldn't be coming into effect at all, that it should be completely frozen where it is, or that this escalator tax in general on beer, wine, and spirits, Marcia, should be scrapped altogether.
You know what's insidious about this tax is that every year, the tax itself increases. It just gets more and more and more expensive every year. And they say it's to meet inflation. Wait a second. Inflation affects the cost of products. Consumers are being screwed over with inflation. And inflation is mostly government derived. They print money, it doubles, it increases the money supply, which is a mean that the government does to fund itself without taxes. But on top of that, the kicker now is that they add on top another tax. So you're being shafted both sides. You're being screwed by inflation, which is a undercover tax, and then you're being screwed by an increase in tax itself. And may I remind you that in Canada, most liquor is sold by crown corporations, by the government already. So not only do they have a monopoly on alcohol sale with no competition, except for Alberta, kudos to you guys. So they make revenue from the sale of the product itself. So with no competition, and they can drive the price to whatever they want. But then on top of that, they tax it. And not only did they tax it, but they increase the tax on it year over year over year over year. Plus, there's the GST, there's a provincial tax or the HST, whatever. We're at a point right now where we're living in an absolute dystopia. I dare you to answer this question. Is there anything in Canada that the government doesn't tax, doesn't license, doesn't regulate, doesn't permit? You're not free. You're probably worse off, actually, than an indentured servant from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. You just have the illusion of freedom. But everywhere you turn, everything you do, you're effectively working for free to maintain a government that doesn't care about you. And pressure is mounting on the government. CTV News reports that it's too expensive now. There's calls for domestic fuel tax relief as Europe and Australia act. Willboy over here says that normally $50 is enough to fill his tank, but now with fuel way up, it's too expensive, he doesn't like it, and he's actually planning to change to electric. Which, by the way, just thought of that. Is this the entire plan all along, is just to ram these crazy taxes and cost of fuel down our throats so that we switch to electric? And if we do switch to electric, who does it really benefit? China? And does it seem like our government is working actively with China these days? Yes. I mean, we even have what appears to be infiltration of Chinese assets within our government. Hello, Michael Ma. Well, nonetheless, the Canadian Taxpayer Federation is renewing calls for the federal and provincial governments to provide relief. The least they could do would be to just temporarily suspend their fuel taxes. According to the group, total taxes on gasoline, including federal excise tax, provincial levies, and the GST, can reach nearly 65 cents per liter in some Canadian cities. So what is the rest of the world doing about the booming cost of fuel? Well, while Canada has maintained its current tax structure, no surprise there, other nations are moving to insulate citizens from some of the price shock. Italy, the government implemented emergency tax relief measures, including a 20-day cut to consumer fuel tax, and offered tax credits to truckers to offset higher diesel costs, which is important because this is not just affecting the cost at the pump as you fuel your car. This affects the entire supply chain. Every product that you rely on, from your food to this water bottle, especially considering this is made of plastic, which is petroleum derived, requires oil. And as such, the increase in taxes and in costs and everything affects that. Spain, Ireland, and Portugal all have introduced temporary tax reduction on fuel. Australia, the federal government has slashed fuel and diesel taxes by half for 3 months. The states of Victoria and Tasmania have made public transit free to reduce demand at the pump. Well, to the surprise of absolutely no one, Ottawa remains non-committal. When asked if Canada would follow the lead of Australia or Italy or whichever other country that seems to care a little bit about their people, Finance Minister François-Philippe Champagne stopped short of promising a tax relief. Don't worry though, because Champagne said that they are following the situation very carefully. So knowing Canada, we're going to create 4 committees which will begin studying the perhaps chance of cutting 10% of taxes, not all taxes, of course not. And then after that, well, Parliament's going to get prorogued, so who cares? That committee is going to get completely nixed, then all Canadians are just going to keep getting screwed. So let me repeat this. It seems that every major Western country is cutting taxes on fuel right now, except Canada. And on April 1st, they're raising the taxes on alcohol. You know, I think the government just wants to watch us drown, and they could be throwing a life jacket, but they don't. I think they're just kind of laughing at it. They're letting us drown slowly but surely. Let's go see how much we actually spend on taxes at the pump. Because by the way, I hear a lot of people on the left side of things saying that, no, it's the petroleum companies. They're the ones screwing you over. Or it's the US's fault. The freaking oil is going up. Yes, it is true. The price of oil has gone up. But how did I start this entire thing? By telling you that at the same exact oil price of decades ago, we're paying almost double the price at the pump. This is a report by the Taxpayer Federation, and based on a relatively low, by today's standards, $1.39 per liter, we could see that roughly a third of the price is just straight taxes. I mean, I take a second here just to realize that every day of your life, the government is happy to charge you that much for you to just go about your day. And they could cut it, they could help you, but they don't. We don't have to live with this. We don't have to. This is not necessary. This is not good. And if you think this is just going to be temporary because of the oil shock due to the war in Iran, I got some bad news for you. Because let's do a little gasoline breakdown of what it's going to cost you just in taxes by 2030. This is just in taxes. This is not accounting for what the price of oil will be then, or the profit margins of oil companies. This is purely tax. In 4 years, 2030, this is not that far away. This is 4 years. Guess who will still be in power in 4 years, by the way? The Liberals. In 2030, Quebec's cap-and-trade carbon tax will cost about 23 cents per liter. Because yes, I forgot to tell you guys, Quebec still has a carbon tax on fuel. It predates the federal one, and it is completely independent. So Quebec gets double shafted. But don't worry, Quebec is not the only one at the carbon tax party, because there's also a hidden federal carbon tax from what's called fuel regulations, which in 2030 will also add an extra 17 cents per liter to the price of gasoline. And this is a little bit of a breakdown of what those taxes will be like based on the region. Let's focus on 3 of them: Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal, right? Our 3 largest cities. In Vancouver, if you account for the provincial excise tax, the carbon tax, the transit tax, provincial sales tax, federal excise tax, federal sales tax, you're going to be at 62 cents per liter just of taxes. In Ontario/Toronto, if you account for all those taxes as well, you'll be at 59 cents. And of course, Montreal will be probably the top in Canada at 98 cents. Nearly $1 per liter will be straight up taxes in 4 years. On average in Canada, it will be roughly 65 cents per liter of just straight taxes. Now, what does that represent in dollar amount though for you, day-to-day citizen, just trying to go about their normal life? Well, the average tax that would be paid on a 64-liter fill-up, which is a pretty average car fill-up, will be $41. That's every fill-up, $41 will be just in taxes. I remember a time when $40 was enough to fill up your tank. Now, that will just be your contribution to the taxation system to fill up that same tank. Just a reminder for everyone here, all right, that we are truly doing our part in saving the world. This is Canada. We have our carbon tax. This is the US. There's no carbon tax. This is Mexico, which might surprise you, but they also don't have a carbon tax. But we will, Canada, we're doing our part, guys. We are doing our part. Keep spreading those cheeks. Keep opening that wallet, baby. Do your part. Or, as CTV News has so candidly recommended, have you considered just simply reducing your standard of living? Because apparently one of the biggest mistakes you can make is having too high of a standard of living. See, for me, my standards of living is what Canada was like 20 years ago, but that's too high, too much to ask for. I'm sorry, and I shall lower my standards. Perhaps I can take solace in knowing that at least we're not Haiti. Yet. Or India. Yet. But you know, the federal government also likes to do this one little trick on April 1st. And no, we're not talking about April Fools where they increase your taxes. That we know already. Another thing they love to do is to give themselves a pay raise. Because on April 1st, under the Parliament of Canada Act, MPs, members of parliament, politicians are entitled to a pay raise. I wish I was making this up. So you pay more, you get poorer, but don't worry, they get richer. So for a federal backbencher, so that's an MP that nobody knows about or cares about, this will amount to an extra $8,800 this year as an increase in salary. Are you getting that much more of an increase this year? I don't think so, pal. For a minister, that is a $13,000 salary increase this year. And for the prime minister, for Carney, although these are definitely pennies for him because let's be honest, he's after that Brookfield Global Transition Fund payout with his carried interest deal, but he's getting an extra $17,600 to do the same job while increasing your taxes. Yeah, guys, that's how it goes. Oh, all this is, by the way, funded by debt that can only be paid back through, again, higher taxes and or more inflation, more money printing. And yes, the conservative MPs did try to fight back against this, and no, they did not win. And yes, they will have to take that raise. But it's a good reminder that they will always choose to line their pockets with your dollars and tell you that you're not doing enough. Oh, and real quick, in case you're wondering how much you actually get paid total. So a backbencher MP gets $209,800 a year. A minister collects $309,700 a year. And the prime minister takes home $419,600 a year. By the way, Canadian politicians are some of the highest paid in the world. The real question should become, do they also perform at the highest level of the world? And we all know that the answer is no. They underperform against pretty much every other nation. Or so it has been for the last decade. But don't worry. They got another solution to make sure you don't end up starving because you can't afford anything.
A good chunk of your platform, a platform you won on, involves nationalizing industries, banking, groceries, construction. Clearly, due to your win, I think we can say that a majority of NDP membership are on board. But how do you sell those ideas to the general public? Something that many would argue you need to do in order to broaden the NDP and grow the NDP.
Oh, absolutely. That is the goal. I've been talking to NDP members for the last 6 months, and I'm really looking forward to getting out and talking to Canadians from coast to coast to coast. You use the word nationalizing, which is not a word that we use. We talk about a public option for groceries and cell phones and stuff like that because it's not about taking existing business.
Public, nationalizing public, it's the same. Semantics, pal.
Is into the public sector, although that is an option in certain cases. We're talking about, for instance, with groceries, developing a chain of 50 publicly owned and operated grocery stores across the country with 6 or 7 regional distribution hubs that would be able to provide groceries to Canadians 30 to 45% cheaper than what they're paying right now. The outrageous cost of food in Canada. Just recent figures came out showing that a majority of Canadians are restricting meals, portion sizes, or skipping meals because of cost.
Oh my God. So the solution to our oligopoly problem is not more competition from the private sector. It's not allowing small competitors to come and thrive. It's not about opening the market to, competition. No, it's government monopolies funded by taxpayer money. And it's not just Avi Lewis here that is promoting this, by the way, because Toronto is already talking about a Mamdani-style public grocery stores to be spread across the city. The city of Toronto wants to get into the grocery business. Council decided today. Just like that, it's easy breezy, right? Taking a page from New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani, Toronto will look into opening 4 non-for-profit city-run grocery stores, which would sell staple goods at prices lower than those of grocery giants like Loblaws and Sobeys. As not-for-profits, the stores will keep markups on foods to an absolute minimum. The city is also considering exempting them from expenses like property taxes and development charges, savings that could then be passed on to consumers. But don't pass on those savings to the wide population, to the general population, and to local entrepreneurs so that they can build wealth and save our economy. No. Save those benefits and privileges just for the government. So let me get this straight. The government wants to use unlimited taxpayer dollars to compete against the private sector, while changing the rules of the game by giving themselves uncompetitive advantages, like not having to pay property taxes or by not having to pay development charges to build new establishments. So instead of resolving our issues through increasing competition and the economic development of our country and creating sound fiscal policies and perhaps just lowering taxes across the board to attract investment into the country, we solve this with more government control. I wish I was making this up. This reminds me of what President Reagan once said. He said the 9 most terrifying words in English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." And I mean, here's a challenge for you guys. Can you name me just one thing that the government touches that doesn't go to shit, that doesn't completely, absolutely goes to waste? That's the beauty of capitalism. The incentive to make things efficient and well-running is that you get to make money at the end. But the government can just tax itself into prosperity, apparently, at your expense. They have no incentive to make things run well. And you know that it won't. You know that it will completely collapse. I mean, after all, doesn't the government have monopoly on the sale of cannabis in, say, I don't know, Ontario and Quebec? See, Quebec, for example, right? The SQDC, monopoly on cannabis sales, they still managed to lose $40 million in their first year of operation. That's right. Selling cannabis, they lost money. They lost money. I wonder if your local drug dealer was losing money. See, private industries, and legal private industries, may I add, don't lose money, because if they do, they go out of business. It's like the great filter. If your business sucks, or if you suck at running it, you go out of business. It's natural selection at best. But this government plays God. It cannot die, it cannot go away, it can just keep taxing itself at your expense. And do you really think it's going to run good? You know, when people rely on the government to live, the government no longer serves. It owns. And this brings us to our crazy liberal ticket today. Guy over here, of course, big brain guy. Anyone else fed up with being squeezed every time you leave the house? Gas, groceries, everything. I'm spending an extra $160 a month on gas alone just to go to work. Unbelievable. Well, Zach had a great answer. You voted for this. It's going to get much, much worse. You guys voted for this. The Liberals, the NDP, all these guys, they voted for this. They love this. They want more. And they think that the solution is to have government control more. To me, that is insanity. Tara says, if Pierre was leading Canada, things would be better. And then Guy says, could you tell me what would be better? I don't know. Maybe there wouldn't be a carbon tax on fuel already. Maybe there would be a deal with the US as promised by Carney already. Maybe, just maybe, we can imagine a future where it hasn't been 10 years of national decline, and perhaps we can stave off our descent into oblivion. And then my favorite one. Carney, he can convince people he has no control over gas price, but has control over climate change. Yes, the lunacies. These are the lunatics of our time, folks. And if you want to see even more lunacy, you have to check out the video I made right here highlighting the wild NDP convention. You cannot handle this level of lunacy. Click on here. You don't want to miss this. But in the meantime, this has been the Right Call Report. My name is Elliot Daniel, and I'll see you guys later this week.